Kaduna State, Malam Nasir Ahmed Arufai, Your Excellency, the Deputy Governor, my sister, the Honorable Minister. Actually, she's my aunt, but I call her my sister, metaphorically. My sister, the wife of His Excellency, the Governor, Haja Aisha Omi Arufai. You know, my brother and friend always complains about Kano people coming to Kaduna to look for freebies. But he has no qualms going to Kano to find this wife. And so I'm glad that behind the governor of Kaduna State is our daughter from Kano. And we're proud of you, and thanks for all you've done. Your Excellency, I thank you once more for inviting me to CADInvest. And as you know, I'm actually a student. I've absconded from school Thursday and Friday because having been part of this conference every year, and this being your last year, it was inconceivable that I would absent myself. You've rightly gone over the progress over the last 7 CADInvests, the achievements of Kaduna State since this started in 2017 are nothing short of remarkable. The results are there for all to see. And it is no surprise that all over this country, when people are giving examples of good stories to tell, of governors that are doing what they're supposed to do, I'm proud always that my friend and brother Nasir is #1 on the list. Not that it surprises all of us who have known him since we were 16, 17. I had reservations about his going to politics because I felt, like me, his temperament was not suitable to that environment. But he has done extremely well, and he has survived. And he has left a legacy. My prayer for the state is that we have continuity. For those of us who've lived in Lagos, we've seen how just having one governor after the other build on what the predecessor did. Anyone who knows Lagos 20 years ago knows that has changed in every single respect. It's not just the roads, it's not just the unicorns, even the color of the water in the marina. I mean, really, for those of us who lived in Lagos, it was black over years of cleaning it up. It's now actually looking blue. So we do hope, and we have Senator Obasani here, and we hope and pray that you have victory in the elections, and we hope and pray that you continue to build on this. I can afford to say this. I wouldn't say it with any other candidate, but this is Nasir's candidate, so I have to be partisan. And what else? So I'm going to speak about improving subnational resilience against global economic shocks. And as you would expect, a lot of the conversation would be around the macro, around the global economy, around the Nigerian economy, and around the threats that subnationals face and have to deal with. So I will go through the global picture, what I call Nigeria's curse, the state's problems, and some recommendations and perspectives. So if we can go to the first slide, where we start talking about the global picture. In a few short months since the beginning of this year, we've seen how the outlook for the global economy has deteriorated sharply. Hopes for a quick resolution of the Ukraine war have disappeared, resulting in a cost of living crisis, high inflation, and as you know, in Great Britain, you already have one big casualty in the Chancellor having had to resign as a result of these crises. Compared to earlier this year, you can see that over a third of the countries in the world weighted by GDP are expected to be in contraction in 2022. In January, it was only 5% of world GDP affected. Now you're talking about countries accounting for 35% of world GDP on a weighted basis going to be in contraction in 2022. That gives you an idea of the world we are moving into. Now, there's an interesting thing about the transparency emerging markets, and I think it's important to look at this particular slide. The red dot, which we're looking at now, deviation from pre-pandemic output trends. The red dot tells us where, in January, the forecast was for different regions of the world. And the bars tell us where we are today in terms of the latest World Economic Outlook. And what you find interesting here is that if you look at the emerging market developing economies of Asia, the red dot is right inside the bar, which means that the outlook today is much worse than it was in January. The same thing with EMDs in general. Same thing with developing economies in Europe, same thing with China, same thing with Latin America. Now, Latin America and the Caribbean and Sub-Saharan Africa, the red dot is right on the point of the bar, which means that between January and now, there has been no deterioration in the outlook for these countries compared to the rest of the world. You can see the United States, where the outlook was actually for a positive growth, and this is where it is now. Now look at the Middle East and Central Asia, and the outlook now is even better than it was in January. Now, why is this important? Why is it important to look at Sub-Saharan Africa and then the Middle East and Central Asia? The reason is that the Middle East and Central Asia is looking very good because of high oil and energy prices. So the question is, if the Ukraine war, if the rising food and energy crisis, the rising food and gas prices, if they're good for Saudi Arabia, if they're good for Kuwait, if they're good for Qatar, if they're good for Iran, why are they bad for Nigeria? Okay? So please don't let anybody tell you that your problem is because of the Ukraine war. The Ukraine war has led to rising oil prices. It's led to rising gas prices. It should be good news for Nigeria. It is good news for all oil-producing countries. It is bad news for us. So the problem is Nigeria, not Ukraine. And we'll explain how that problem has built up, or what we think is the cause of that problem on the fiscal and the monetary side. You've got gathering clouds. And there is a silent gathering cloud that people are not paying attention to. If you look at this graph, it is the strengthening US dollar. Over the last few weeks and months, the dollar has been rising at a rate that we only saw last in 1980. A number of factors, obviously, with the sanctions on Russia, America is selling gas and energy to Europe. The dollar is becoming a safe haven in times of global insecurity. But what this has done is that this revaluation, this increase in the value of the trade-weighted dollar by 17% has placed a tremendous burden on currencies worldwide. You find this in Ghana, you find this in South Africa, you find this in Europe. You find that in general, against all major currencies, the dollar has been rising. I want you to bear this graph in mind, especially this arrow that you have. I want you to bear this graph in mind, especially this arrow that you have, because a few graphs down the line, we're going to come to the Nigerian foreign exchange market, and you will see the parallels I'm trying to draw. Now, I have a section that is referred to as Nigeria's curse. We talk about oil as a blessing, or it can be a curse. What are our own problems? Let us begin with us being an oil economy with no oil revenue. In 2011, the federal government earned about $60 billion from the oil sector. This amount has been going down successively. Today, in 2022, based on half-year figures, if we annualize, the revenue of the federal government from the oil sector is only $2.9 billion. From 60 billion to 2.9 billion. Now, I know we have been told often that this was partly a result of declining oil prices a few years ago. What is the explanation today? What is the explanation today that with high oil prices, federal government revenue in 2022, when the oil markets are buoyant, it's only $2.9 billion? What I'm going to do today is I'm going to give numbers. I'm going to give tables. I'm going to let you draw your own conclusions, okay? I'm tired of being quoted, but I'll give you the facts. And the facts will speak to themselves. And you can guess from these facts what is happening and why we are where we are. Now, what is the result of this failure in public financial management? Every year we have a budget. Everywhere we budget revenue, and everywhere we underperform. In 2015, we projected revenue of 3.5 trillion. We ended up with 3.2, which was close. 2016, 3.9, we had 2.9. 2017, 5.1, down to 2.7 in reality. 2018, we projected 7.2 trillion and got 3.9. 2019, we projected 6.9 and got 4.1. 2020, we projected 5.8 and got 3.4. The gap keeps widening, and I think in this current budget that we have for this year, we are projecting 9 trillion naira. And most likely, we are going to underperform that figure. So what is the result of failing to raise this revenue? What is the result of the failure to trap revenues and the failure to fund the government?